Now, as you know, when we create our calculations, we can set up formatting to get the currency or the percent formatting to display. But there are some more formatting properties to be familiar with. For example, with profit margin percent, we might want to call attention to values when they're below a certain threshold. For example, we have this 3% here in quarter 3 of 2007 that maybe we want to call out by using a red, bold font. And so we can do that by setting color and font expressions for that calculation. So let's go back to the Calculations tab, and then with our profit margin percent selected here, let's expand the color expressions section. And here we can access two different colors, fore color or back color. The fore color will change the color of the font being displayed, whereas the back color is like a fill color and will be used to highlight the background of the cell in which a value appears. Now with our color expressions, typically these would be conditional expressions, and we use the immediate if function and we can compare a value to a threshold. So I can open the parentheses here and we see a tooltip that gives us the syntax. We can see we need a logical expression as the first argument. That is, we need some expression that returns either true or false. And then in the second argument, we would provide the value that the expression would return if that logical expression is true. And then for the third argument, we would provide a value that gets returned when the logical expression is false. So let's come up with a logical expression. We want to compare the profit margin percent So we'll just drag and drop that in here to a value, and we'll say that if it's below 10%, which would be represented here as 0.1, so there's our logical expression. So we'll use a comma to close off that argument, and then we need to provide the expression to return when our profit margin is below 10%. Well, we want it to return a red font. If we don't know the code to use to return a red font, all we have to do is use the color picker here. We just click this button, and then we can choose a color off of the basic color template, or we can be very specific and create a custom color. But I think using a standard color here should suffice. So we'll select that color and click OK, and we can see that the number 255 has been placed here to indicate red, and there's a comment added for us as well to remind us what that value represents. So that's our second argument. We need one more argument. We'll put in a comma, and now we'll choose black, and then close off the parentheses here. Now if you need more space, you can always just hit the Enter key here to open up this space. If you have a lot of conditions that you want to test for, you have plenty of room to put those expressions in place. So just to review, we have a conditional expression here. When profit margin percent is below 10%, we're going to display red. When it's 10% or higher, we're going to display a black font. And similarly, we can change the font expressions. We can specify font name, font size, or even font flags, such as bold or italics. So again, we'd use a conditional expression here. So we'll start with if the profit margin percent is below 0.1, then we'll select bold, click OK, and you can see that the value 1 was inserted here to represent bold. Otherwise, we'll just use regular, and then click OK, and close off our immediate if function with parentheses. So 1 stands for bold, and 0 stands for regular font. To see this work, we'll right-click on the project and deploy. And then we can go to the browser and reconnect here, where we see our red font appear anywhere we have a value that's below 10%. Now you may notice that we do have the red font here, but the bold is not displayed. And that's because the BIDS browser does not always have complete functionality. So in order for us to properly test our format expressions, we'll need to go to Excel, where here we have a connection defined to our cube, and we can see that the values over 10% are not bolded and have the black font, but anything with the value below 10% does correctly show with a red font and bolded. So it's important to validate your work outside of the bids environment just to make sure that you get the behavior that you're looking for.